Daisy Waugh was almost guaranteed to be a writer, with her father, Oberon, grandfather, Evelyn, great-grandfather, Arthur. Goodness me, all putting pen to paper.
Some of her grandfather's early novels, like Vile Bodies, were set during the Roaring Twenties. Now, Daisy's chosen that era as the backdrop for her latest book, and she's here to tell us all about it.
Morning.
Good morning. Except that, I suppose, the difference between your particular work here and your grandfather's work is yours is set in America, and he wrote about British society largely. You lived in LA for a while, didn't you? But
I lived in LA. Mine's more about movie stars and very poor people. I don't think he covered that. I don't think he covered that.
And an incredibly toxic mix, as it turns out. There are actual real-life movie stars in the movie. People like Charlie Chaplin, Greta Garbo.
I've got a slight crush on Charlie Chaplin, actually.
Is that why it was?
I'm fighting the urge to put him in my next novel as well, but yeah, he's got quite a big part.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
Could we get you some water? While we phrase a very long question to help you out. Well, in a sense, it struck me that when you write about real-life characters, though, is that fair to the extent that you're sort of imposing a fiction on truth?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and I think, on the whole, the people that I write about, I like very much. I think if you're damning, and I have done that before, written about baddies, and it's a difficult question. I mean, on the other hand, they're dead, and you can't libel the dead, and history belongs to everyone and to no one. So I haven't really got a definitive answer to that, but I think Charlie Chaplin would be delighted by the way I portrayed him.
He wouldn't mind it. Okay.
I think so, doesn't he? He's quite very, very attractive and clever.
No, you don't do any disservice in the book at all. Tell us a little bit.
I tease a bit.
Yes, you do tease some of them. Tell us about the main characters, Max and Eleanor Beecham.
Well, they're fictional, obviously, and they come from... it's set during the early 20th century when there were millions of immigrants coming into New York at the time, and they start life as immigrants in the sweatshops, working in the sweatshops in Manhattan, living in these slums, and then manage to make their way out of that to live in this, the kind of height of glamour and richness in Hollywood. But they leave behind this sort of tragic story, and so that no matter how brightly they shine, there's this awful
because the novel's title,
them.
"Melting the Snow on Hester Street," refers to, of course, an address in Manhattan and that tragic incident, which we won't go into in too much detail, to spoil the story. Being the daughter and granddaughter of such great writers, did you feel? Well, no. Did you feel compelled to become a writer? And also, there must be some certain pressure. I mean, there's a sort of family standard to live up to, isn't there?
There is a bit of a standard. I think with Evelyn Waugh is really quite successful, and I think it'd be quite hard. There are a lot of people who won't write unless they think they're going to beat Shakespeare, which is sort of babyish, because A, they're not going to succeed, and B, I don't personally want to read Shakespeare all the time. I quite like reading lots of different novels. So. What can I say? I've only ever been a Waugh, and I've only ever wanted to write, so I don't know which came first, or.
Yes, if it's in your genes, you didn't really feel it wasn't much of a struggle then to start.
Well, it's always been instinctive. I've always done it. I mean, as a child, I did it. I was very lazy at school, but I always wrote stories. So it's just a.
And the inspiration behind this story is actually a real life event. There's a couple. There's the Wall Street crash for starters, isn't it, which plays a big part.
I mean, wasn't fun for them, but it was quite
fun thing to write.
Fun writing about it. Yeah, and the Triangle Factory fire, of course.
And to remind people who don't know, I mean, I didn't know when I read the book what happened in that fire. It's a fire in New York.
It's a fire in New York happened in 1911. Obviously, the crash happened in 1929, and the fire happened in 1911. So there's this 20-year gap in my story. It's an appalling story, and visually it's a little bit like 9/11. The workers were throwing themselves. They were trapped on the top of this skyscraper, and they were throwing themselves.
And locked in by their employer.
Locked in by their employer, and this fire took hold of the top 3 floors of this factory. In half an hour, 146 people were dead, and there were crowds downstairs on the pavement watching the people throwing themselves off. It's awful, and the piles of bodies.
From such tragic material for a moment, one of your other lines in the past has been you're an agony aunt, but you admit you weren't. It wasn't a great success.
Well, nobody wrote to me. It was totally
why wouldn't they write to you?
I think the newspaper didn't have a massive readership, which didn't help. So we were all very young. The staff was very young. We all sort of sat around inventing.
Couldn't you get the staff could write to you with their problems as well?
Yeah, I'm really trying to give up smoking. Yeah, all right.
Okay, well, I'm glad you found a much more successful vein now.
Yes, thank you very much.
you.
The new book, it's called Melting the Snow on Hester Street, and it's out tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Daisy.
9:05.